Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Digital Jersey, for putting on this fascinating week of events. My name's Dr. Austin Gibbs. I'm an associate specialist in emergency medicine here in Jersey. I have worked in A&Es for about 15 years all around the world. As such, you guys typically always ask me the same question, so we'll get the answer out early doors. It was a Buzz Lightyear, to infinity and beyond indeed. Now, my talk today is simply titled Perfectly Placed: Why I believe that Jersey is such for accessing this emerging health tech market. I'm an unashamed nerd. If you cut me, I'll bleed binary. My particular interest is in immersive technologies. And really, this is bringing together the human brain with a computer. Broadly, they come in two flavors, really. Machine learning and artificial intelligence, or augmented intelligence, which is where we try and get a computer to think like a machine. And the other flavor is augmented reality and virtual reality, where we actually use the computer to influence the brain. Now, the journey that I'm going to take you on today, I've actually done with all of these areas, but for the sake of brevity, and because it's my absolute personal favorite, I'm going to talk about virtual reality. Now, what is virtual reality? Well, it's an artificial environment created with software and presented to the user in such a way that they believe it's real. It suspends their belief. My first experience of this was quite a few years ago now. I have a friend who's, let's just say, an early adopter. And he bought one of the latest systems, and as a computer gamer, terribly excited, went down there to try it. Put on the headset, fantastic. Standing on a castle, defending against the Mongol hordes with a nice big bow and arrow. What fun. Now, for most of the people in the room, and certainly for myself, I'm what at best described as a data whore. I love data. Data is this era's coal. We are currently using to power steam engines, but in the future we will be building buckyballs and nanotubes out of it. As such, I was wearing a fitness tracker. A couple of days later, I happened to be downloading and looking through it, and I noticed that while I was defending against these Mongol hordes, I actually had a tracing that was the same as a cliff path run. Now, I don't claim to be the fittest bloke in the world. I'm a bit more dad fit these days. But it was remarkable that those two tracings were very similar. And they also were very different from a treadmill tracing. When you go on a cliff path run, you get a granality to the data, a fuzziness. You're running up and down. There's a dog running out. You slip. There's an angry seagull. There's all kinds of fuzziness in the data. And it was the same defending these hordes. Now, I have a myriad of ways of collecting data from you humans. It's fantastic. I can look at your brain, I can look at the electrical activity in your brain, I can look at your heart rate, your blood pressure, saturations, your gene expression. Hell, I can even live stream your sphinctal tone. Sadly, this doesn't come in a Buzz Lightyear option, and nor does it come in a wireless option. But the thing about health data, differing from coal, is that we can generate it. But how we generate it in the laboratory is very crude. Essentially, we can put you on a treadmill, we can make you run, we can give you drugs to rise your heartbeat and drop it. But it's not like real life. The data you generate is very steam levery. It's very artificial. And crucially, what I can't do is change the way you mentally think to develop that, to produce that data. I can't change your state of mind. But that tracing from defending the Mongol hordes looked like real life. Interesting. So I wondered, I'm a gamer, I'm obviously programmed to enjoy this kind of thing. Perhaps it was just me. So what I did a couple of years ago is I gathered 46 people and I designed an off-the-shelf system with the VR stuff to try and generate a physiological response. I wired people for sound. This group included all sorts, from those that experience VR in computer games to those that barely use a typewriter, for those that are very young to the old, the fit and the unfit. The results are remarkable. Every single person generated a physiological response that looked like real life. It didn't look like lab data. It had that fuzziness, that granality. And interestingly, the same phrase was repeated to me over and over again. I know it's not real, but it feels real. Interesting. Now, I did a bit of a digging into the research. Turns out I'm no Einstein. Other people have realized this as well. And the research has been going on since about the early 80s into this effect. But the technology hasn't really been there. We haven't really been able to use this in any meaningful sense. A few years ago now, by about 3 years ago, there was only about 500 research papers in total to date looking at this effect. As it stands today, there are over 800 trials that are registered with the American Council awaiting process looking into this effect. A huge expansion. And some of these effects are incredible. You can take a burns victim, place them in VR where they're building a snowman in the snow, and they need less pain medication. They know it's not real, but it feels real. It feels cold. The American military cottoned onto this pretty early doors, and they use it for PTSD treatment. So their soldiers will come back, they can place them in the traumatic environment, the things that they're reliving in their dreams. They know it's not real, but it feels real. It allows them to work through that trauma. And in fact, they've taken it on another step. They now take their soldiers before they go to a theatre of war and place them in these horrendous events. And they teach them psychological techniques to prevent PTSD from happening. And I actually do it with my juniors. I'm cruel like that. I need my juniors, when a blue baby comes through the back door, I need them to be on it. I need them to be in their Goldilocks zone, where they're not relaxed, they're not too stressed, they've got just about the right amount that they're going to be at their best. So I do a course where I actually stress the crap out of them. I push them up through their Goldilocks zone and to the other side. And I show them, using their physiological data, the point where they personally are performing at their best, and when they begin to drop off, and how to bring themselves back. Immensely powerful. Why? Essentially, this technology has allowed us to complete the circle. I now have my keyboard and mouse. I have my way of putting data into the machine to generate data out. I can complete that circle of biometric feedback. Hugely useful: diagnosis, treatment, training. But also economically. I've lived in Jersey long enough to know money's important. Every PowerPoint presentation should have some graphs and obtuse graphs, so here's mine. And this is really showing you the health tech market in general. It's predicted just in the next couple of years to swell to nearly 200 billion, encompassing all health tech. If we specifically look at just AR and VR in the immersive tech market, and just in health, in America alone, it's expected to reach 5 billion. Now, this is only based on data that's already been published, not these new trials. So I think this is pretty conservative. But what does this matter for Jersey? Why is it important? Well, sandbox. A concept that Digital Jersey have come up with, and a concept I love. You see, the thing about this technology, great though it is, the skills and the way you build the stuff is all within the computer game industry, within software engineering industry. They have a testing system, beta and alpha. They give it to guys like me, we play with it, it goes back, it gets patched, it comes back. But if they create something for the health market, it's valueless without clinical validation, without the pharmaceutical side, where you have to prove that something works. You have to publish the paper. You have to tell the clinicians, this really does work. Look, boom. Otherwise, they're not going to be interested. And Jersey actually has these skills. We have the digital side. We know this. Look at this room. But we also have a representative population and a low bureaucratic overhead, I'm aware that that's a controversial statement, to run these trials on a small scale, which can then be extrapolated out to large scales. And this has other benefits as well. Not only on the digital side, Digital Academy, we've talked about, young graduates coming and working in a space like this, being seconded to these companies. But also, and I'm going to use a swear word here, the new hospital. Now, the new hospital, where it's built and what it is, it's actually pretty irrelevant. What matters is how you fill the box. Attracting and retaining high-quality staff. If you have a space where you're doing research that is currently not done really anywhere else in Europe, you will attract people to come over who want to do this. This is exciting. And then you turn around and go, by the way, check out the beaches. Great idea. Lovely, isn't it? We have a phrase in my job, and it's a little crude. And it's called intellectual masturbation. And essentially, it's fun, it's ultimately diverting, but there's no end product. And knowing I was doing this talk, and being the scientist that I am, I wanted to test this theory. I wanted to see if it was real. If my idea, my concept here, and the concept of Sandbox Jersey for digital health was actually a thing. So, a couple of months ago, I identified 6 companies around the world which I thought would be perfect for this. And I contacted them, and I outlined where their product was, and where I saw it going, and what we could offer them in Jersey in terms of jurisdictional benefits, clinical validation, and a joined-up sandbox. Incredibly, they're all on board. They were super excited. And unfortunately, I'm actually bound now by some non-Trumpy non-disclosure agreements, so I can't talk in too much detail, but I will, for the sake of brevity at least, talk about 2 companies to demonstrate the breadth of this idea. The first company is a company from France, a young startup, Healthy Mind, based in Strasbourg. They're lovely guys. A couple of years ago, they developed a VR experience where you sit in a Japanese temple or on a lovely beach, while somebody in A&E or someone in the hospital does something horrible to you with probes or needles. And they've been able to get that into 6 hospitals in France, and they're using that. But it's very clunky, and it's a very early stage, and they don't have any clinical validation or any means of doing that. So I contacted them, we're in discussions, and so actually we've moved quite a lot on from there, and we're now building a bespoke build of their software and hardware solution according to my specifications, and we're going to take it to clinical trial for them here in the next year or so. This has actually allowed this company, having this access to a sandbox to test, to generate more investment in their company, because they now have a product of value. If you don't validate these products, that lovely billion-pound health tech market, you ain't getting access to it. And then I went big, inspired by the tuna. I wanted to test this to its absolute max. I wanted to push this idea to its logical conclusion. And there's a company called The Mill. Now, these are a visual effects company. They started back in the 90s. You will have all seen their work. They cut their teeth doing the original Jurassic Park, Harry Potter, Gladiator, Game of Thrones, the BMW advert where it turns into butterflies, all that kind of stuff. Really interesting, really creative, really progressive company. And part of their process is they allow their software engineers and their creative designers to do what they call blue sky projects. Go! Be creative. And these guys, one weekend, put together this VR experience about 2 years ago for their own enjoyment. And they used it in an exhibition in the Victoria and Albert Museum and in the New York Museum of Modern Art. And that was it. They put it on a shelf. But what they created has immense potential in health. So I contacted them. I chanced my arm. And I said, you know that thing you built? I think we can do something with that in Jersey. And you know what? We are. I've had some lovely meetings up in London. They have a wonderfully progressive office with a terrace with a vegan smoothie bar. It's all very creative. I definitely didn't have enough facial hair, and my trousers were way too long for that place. But we're now in the late stage of discussions, and we're starting to work in January next year. So, perfectly placed. It's not just a theory, it's a reality. Thank you for your time.